Yesterday I watched it on YouTube. Now I know it's a fact.
G'day everyone, it's me, the anti-theocrat, back with another one. Hopefully I can get through this without too much hacking and coughing. It's been, some hot summer night, so I've had the air conditioning running at night, and of course the 4-year-old got the lurgy and handed it around. Thank you very much. So whatever I'm dying of, I'm sorry, I'll do my best. Why are our prisons full of domestic violence victims? Oh, better bring this up so you can see it. This is our topic for the day. The ABC, as usual, with its very unbiased reporting of any topic. Why are our prisons full of domestic violence victims? Because they're nasty pieces of shit. That's why. The number of women, of course it's women, never men, in prisons is continuing to soar, new data shows. But advocates, because advocates are the people who have the best interest of humanity, not their advocacy, in mind, don't they? Are warned we can't arrest the increase until we start properly addressing domestic abuse. That's right, we should get rid of the fucking feminists out of the message and look at it realistically. Which affects an overwhelming majority of women behind bars. Right, so it has no impact on men at all. It's only about the women's. Shall we find out how terrible this situation is? Shall we? Hayley Gleason and Julia Bard. Feminazis. I know, I'm counting on that from this article, I tell you. Every year, more and more women are being crammed into Australian jails, yet we rarely question why. Do we often question why men are thrown in prisons in increasing numbers? Do we? Because there would be some suggestion that crime statistics are improving and have improved steadily for decades. So, are we becoming oversensitive? I'm not inclined to think that that's the answer to this. I think the answer to this is well described in this article. So let's get on with it, shall we? As we lap up fictional versions of female incarceration on our television, the glamorous inmates in cult hit Orange is the New Black, or grittier local versions in the award-winning Wentworth, an unprecedented number of women are steadily flowing into the blunt brick prisons dotting our suburbs. Because that never happened to men. But apparently we can start out by blaming television shows for glorifying prison, shall we? Is that the reason? Is that because you started out, asking a question, is this your reason? Did you start with your answer? Is your answer because prison's being glorified and women really, really want to go there? I don't think so. And an overwhelming majority of them have one underlying experience in common. They do? They're all criminals. That would be it, wouldn't it? Look at that nice chart. Look at that. Ooh, pretty. Consider this: over the past decade, the total number of people behind bars in Australia has skyrocketed, rising by almost 40% since 2013 and 56% since 2008, according to ABS data released earlier this month. But while men continue to make up the majority of the prison population, how dare they even mention them? 92%. That makes women 8% of the prison population. Women are pretty much 50-50, as horrendous as men. It is statistically bugger all difference between how horrid women are and how horrid men are. And prison populations really do represent a very small part of our population. So, yeah, I'm seeing here the bias already, because they're not going to say 8%. No. They're not going to say only 8% of people in prison are women. The number of women being incarcerated is increasing at a significantly higher rate, a staggering 85% over the past 10 years. 85% to 8% of the total population. I think it's possible we have been underrepresenting women in our prison system. We've been letting them off way too light. Indigenous women account for much of that growth. I could explain to you why Indigenous women represent a large part of that population, but I'll let this article do it later on, and I will point it out for you exactly where they explain why. The latest national snapshot of prisoners in Australia shows that as of June 2018, there were 3,625 women in custody. That's 8%, remember. Up 10% in just 1 year, which means they were only a very small population prior to that, weren't they? 8%. 8% currently at the time of this article. By the way, this article's a year old, but it was reposted in December. I'm guessing with some edits. So yes, where were we? A third of female prisoners, 34%, were Aboriginal Torres Strait Islanders, despite Indigenous women comprising 2% of the broader female population. And again, I will let this article explain why. More than a third, 37% of all female prisoners were on remand or unsentenced, and almost half, 47%, had been incarcerated previously, rising to 64% for Indigenous women. This is an important fact. 37% of the female prisoners were on remand. Now, it might be that there's a significant number of men on remand as well awaiting cases, but to get placed on remand, you have to have committed a crime that the court thinks you are safer being put away for. And it might just be that they're worried you're going to run, but whatever the case is, it's not something that's done lightly. They don't just throw people in a cell for fun. Excuse me, a tick. The death will come. So these women are on remand awaiting cases, and they have been behaving badly enough in whatever crime, capacity of crime they committed, that they ended up needing to be locked away, awaiting their case. 37%. Now, if these women were getting put away at 37% rate, so let's look at this, right? 10% rise in the last 12 months. That means 27% of the women on remand are likely to not get a custodial sentence. I worry that this is under sentencing, because how strongly do you have to how strongly does a court have to believe that a woman is a danger to put her on remand? We under sentence women all the time. What do you think it takes for a court to place a woman on remand? And yet, if we take this just raw, very basic maths, right? I'm not going into any great detail here. If we just take this as a raw, 10% increase in the last year, we'll take that as 10% of the 37% are likely to get sentenced. That means 27% walk away. And I know that's not accurate, but let's just take that as a base, shall we, position. It might be that more women get put away, which is why there's an increase, but at the same time, 37% of women are only on remand. They're not there because they have been convicted. They're there because they are considered a danger. Behind these figures, though, is one often overlooked. An overwhelming majority of women in prison are violators of domestic violence, with evidence suggesting between 70% and 90% of incarcerated women have physically or sexually or emotionally abused someone else, children or adults. So, shit, I've read this whole paragraph wrong. Yeah, I might have done it deliberately. Behind these figures, though, is one often overlooked fact. An overwhelming majority of women in prison are victims of domestic violence, with evidence suggesting between 70% and 90% of incarcerated women have been physically, sexually, or emotionally abused as children or adults. And experience, experts say, frequently leads to their offending and criminalisation. Right, so this is something that we've known forever. This is something we said about men forever. But we don't try and make it an excuse for men. Why are we so set on making it an excuse for women? In any case, we know that the majority of domestic violence is reciprocal. So we could take it that these women are not actually victims automatically, but are co-conspirators. It may even be that the reason they are inside is because they are such horrendous pieces of shit that they forgot to keep it at home where the police are less likely to arrest them, and they took it out in the street, and they got arrested for it in the street. Because this is the nature of our system. We are less likely to arrest a woman than a man in a domestic violence situation, unless that woman is that kind of horrendous piece of shit who needs locking away. So what happens with these women is they get used to the idea that they can just be nasty pieces of shit. Always. And they take it out in the street. Then they get arrested. And once in the system, they are likely to return. Yeah, a common enough statistic when it was men. You didn't give a fuck to make it an excuse for them. It is the cost of incarceration. The cost. It's confronting to think about. But we have to ask ourselves whether we need prisons for women at all, were it not for the family and domestic violence. Alana Campbell, who's a fucktard, Associate Director of Research, Advocacy and Policy at RMIT's Centre for Innovative Justice. Innovative justice means fucking creative. It means it has no place in reality now. Fuck off. Alana Campbell's a fucking idiot. She wants to do away with women's prisons. I wonder if she'd be so happy if we were doing away with men's prisons, because men are violated and men suffer through incarceration. I wonder if she would suggest that. And knowing these clowns, she probably would. She'd probably think we could put them on a nice sweet little island like they do in Sweden or Norway, you know, away from the population, where they live together sweet and happy. Yeah. But the argument is being made that we can get rid of women's prisons, remembering that 30% of women in prison are on remand because the court thought that they were nasty enough pieces of shit to be not locked away, and that they are only, in total, 8% of the prison population. Family violence is an experience that probably contributes directly to women's trajectory towards offending. Yeah, I'm not going to read the rest of that, because we know that about men as well, don't we? It is critical to note that the stats are even bleaker for Aboriginal women, who are 35 times more likely than non-Indigenous women to be hospitalised for family violence-related assaults, and are incarcerated at 21 times the rate of non-Indigenous women. Righto. So here, we're looking at a number 35 and a number 21, and we can assume from that that the majority of these 35 cases, the woman was the perpetrator. She was the violent one. And this is where I'm talking about this article making the case for me. And this isn't even the best bit. They really make the case for me big time later. But Aboriginal women, in just in this paragraph, we could take it that, 14% of the time a man was responsible for the problem. But 21% of times, these are percentages, sorry, it's times more likely. But 21% of the time, we can assume that the woman was the perpetrator. Experts say there are numbers of historical contributing factors. You can go and fly off a fucking bridge. Go. Now. Take a leap from something really fucking tall. Because I don't buy all this bloody historical shit. Where do you think British society was 250 years ago? Do you think we've all done a lot of growing up in 250 years? Now, I know that there have been problems for the Aboriginal community during those 250 years, but you can't tell me that it is simply because of other people that you can't get off your asses and be good people. Right? Within your own community, right? Because that's where most of the violence that we're talking about happens. Aboriginal or non-Aboriginal violence. That black on black violence we're never allowed to talk about. How is it that we caused you in your communities to be worse people? Do you have no responsibility for your own actions? Well, of course not. This is about women, and that's part of the problem. They're raised to believe they have no responsibility. It's about men. It's about historical factors. It's about being Indigenous. It's just about being a woman. It's about being abused. It's always someone else's fault. Excuse me. Experts say there are a number of historical... we don't give a fuck. When you create environments where people are less equal or more marginalised, go and take a fucking leap off that bridge again. Just do it. I went to school with Aboriginal kids. I remember that every other Thursday they wouldn't come to school. Do you know why they wouldn't come to school? A little thing they called the bung check, or the coon check, depending who you're talking to and what day. This check was basically $45 deposited into their bank account by the government, their bank account, not their parents' bank account, into their personal bank account by the government every fortnight, every other Thursday. And you knew what day it was in the fortnight by the day they didn't come to school. And this stands as an example for the entire Aboriginal welfare structure. They don't have to do anything to get given money. They get given money, they get given handouts, they get given services, legal services, land services, you fucking name the services. My next door neighbour's got a fucking free public house. And moved here. And if you believe the stories, money to move. No white person in this country gets that. This is handouts for the sake of handouts. It's white guilt being played out in cash. Don't tell me you're fucking unable to... Oh, we can't do anything. Poor us. Fuck off. In fact, chances are this was written by a white woman in a fucking city who's never been to a remote community. Never seen how people live out here. They just fucking invent this shit in their little university offices. Anyway, so what's going on? Why is the number of women in prison increasing so rapidly? Surely it cannot be because we have become innately more inclined to crime. Why are so many of them victims of abuse? And how might their trauma have paved the path to incarceration? Well, same questions we can ask of men, isn't it? Why are more people in prisons when statistically violent crime and theft and so forth have decreased? Are we locking people up for lesser crimes? Are we getting oversensitive? Now, I would suggest, due to this article, that we're locking up women for crimes they should have been getting locked up for anyway. But why are we locking up so many men? What are they doing that's getting them incarcerated? Is it the theft of a biscuit? Are we going to transport them to the new world? Why has this problem continued to fly under the radar? Don't fucking keep pondering shit, you dopey fuck. In an ongoing ABC investigation, because I can't leave this shit alone, they've got to continue with their sexism. Family violence, a pathway to offending. Yeah. We knew this decades ago. We talked about it with men and we fucking ignored it. But now we've got to close women's prisons. Guess where I'm going to tell you to go? To fucking buggery. Homelessness, for instance, or gambling. What do we got here? Family violence can also be a factor that set people on a path towards. This is just general crap about family violence. But isn't it nice to see them admit that other behaviours alcohol, drug abuse, self-medication, coping with trauma, mental illness and gambling can all be factors. Isn't that nice? So it's not just men then. It's not just that men do these things. Homelessness, for instance, was reported, and here we get to blame a television show for buying a property which apparently left homeless people on the street, and that meant more women ended up in prison. I don't know how that's anyone else's fault except the women. I understand homelessness is not always your fault. It's not always something that be dealt with, but there are more women in shelters than men by percentage, yet there are more men homeless. So don't give me this shit. More than half of women in prison have been sleeping rough or living in short-term accommodation in a month prior to being incarcerated. That tells me something about the nature of the women that are being incarcerated. I wonder how many men are in that same situation. What percentage? Look, this is the first time I have ever questioned how people become homeless in this way. Are these women homeless because they are nasty pieces of shit? Right, I know that homeless men can be nasty pieces of shit, but I know there are a hell of a lot of other factors that play into why men become homeless. But this suggests that there's a problem with women and they're ending up in prison. Those existing prisons are also at greater risk of homelessness. Bullshit, more bullshit. We already know all this crap, but when we make it all about women, I don't care, because you don't make these excuses for men. A second, more direct way a women's experience of domestic violence can contribute to their criminalisation is when, as Ms. Braybrook says, she is forced by a violent partner to take the blame for his crime, or where she finally cracks after facing years of violence and fights back. And this can never happen to men. Let me tell you a little story. Let me get comfortable on this squeaky seat and let me tell you a story of Frances. Frances was a friend of mine, and she ended up doing quite well with her life. She became the head surveyor of California, I believe, before she died of cancer. Now, I was a friend. Frances, Karen, and I were close enough friends through high school, my later high school years. So I knew Frances quite well, and I'd moved out of Darwin at that time and headed south, and I was on holiday, and I ended up going and visiting Frances when I went back on my holiday. And Frances told me a story of how much she loved a guy, that she'd convinced him that to make money they could sell drugs, and then she did most of the buying and selling while he did delivery work, essentially. Now, they got busted. They were moving significant amount of drugs. And this is all from her telling of the story. I know nothing of this myself. I never bothered to look it up. This is just her telling me the story. They were moving significant amounts of drugs. When the police came knocking, he took the blame. Now, she explains it that he willingly took the blame. Actually took all of the heat off her. She got away with nothing. Not even a slap on the wrist. She was, incarcerated and questioned and all the rest of it, but in the long run, he did a 10-year stint for her crimes that she convinced him to get involved in. While he was doing his 10 years, she found a new guy. She found a new guy after that. She ended up in America, married to a Yank, and doing well in America. But this was a woman convincing a guy to take the rap for her crimes. Does anyone not think this is possible? This is my first-hand life experience. One of my good friends telling me her crimes against humanity. I have no problem telling the story because Frances is long dead now. But think about it. This is trying to say, the men force the women to do things. Go get fucked. Gynocentrism is massively a problem for people. We will protect women, we men. We will do it to women we don't fucking know. We will put our hands up for things just to keep women out of trouble. But you think this is just about male violence against women. In several cases, Australian cases, women convicted of killing their current and former partner told police and courts they acted in self-defense. Well, of course they fucking did. They're looking for a lighter sentence. What's the fucking mystery there? Really, I want to know what the fucking mystery is. Because it doesn't need to be true, right? Yeah, for the lighter sentence, you claim self-defense. Let's face it, women will walk away with no conviction at all for self-defense. Often after having endured sometimes decades of abuse. Yes, which they probably started, because we know reciprocal violence is the biggest contributor to domestic violence. And we also know that when violence is not reciprocal, it is more often the women who instigate the violence. And we also know that in the cases where it is reciprocal, women often start the problem, right? It might just be verbal abuse or something, but the violence starts because a woman caused it to start. I had a girlfriend once who tried to get me into a bar fight because I wasn't violent enough in bed for her. Now, you work this shit out. Seriously. In a recent study of incarceration, Aboriginal women in Western Australia, many participants linked their experience of victimisation to their own retaliatory violence. Retaliatory violence. It has to be retaliatory violence. I'm telling you now, this isn't fucking true. We'll get to that. I don't care about Louise's case, because Louise is probably a liar. When prison is a safer place, this is the assumption that they're locking up women in prisons because they're safer. Now, if anyone thinks a women's prison is safe, you got another thing coming. Excuse me. Just die. Anne Rose, by the way, is not anyone you want to go for informed information. Anne Rose will create and invent whatever they bloody want. Yeah, so they're suggesting that women go to prison to escape domestic violence because there's not fucking enough shelters or support or anything for women who are violated. No. Prison is where you've got to go. No, fuck off. Just fuck off. You point the finger at a bloke and have a bruise and watch how fast he goes away. You don't have to take the rap for that. That's bullshit. For some women, going to prison will be the first time they've had a chance to get to breathe and feel safer. I actually put this forward on a men's rights forum or something I was commenting on, where someone had written an article saying, can you fix a domestic violence abuser? And I said, yes, leave. Let them find someone they're compatible with. Let you find someone you're compatible with, but leave. If the relationship is violent, leave. You are rubbing each other the wrong way. And again, we know reciprocal violence is the most prominent form of domestic violence. So you're rubbing each other the wrong way, leave. Many of them don't feel safe. Bullshit. Excuses. When you cause it. The third link is that survivors of abuse are at a greater risk of substance abuse, mental health issues. Yeah? When was this not an issue for men? Why does it mean we have to get rid of women's prisons? The Mental Health Legal Centre's caseload has doubled over the past 2 years. So women are fucking retarded? That's what you're saying, isn't it? Or is this a legal centre making excuses for women? Oh, she's on the spectrum. We can't charge her. Okay, ice. Yeah, fucking women on ice. But don't worry, I'm not allowed to blame them. Don't care. Abusive men are manipulating the system. Yeah, just fuck off. What a load of shit. Not. By the way, this is one of my examples of where this article will explain what's going on. Not that intervention orders are always protective, as a fourth risk factor shows. One emerging but alarming phenomenon leading to women's criminalisation, lawyers and advocates say, because the advocates, we've got to listen to them, is the growing number of domestic violence victims being misidentified by police as primary aggressors and named as respondents on family violence intervention orders. That's right, because the women's, they never did nothing. They never did nothing, never. Ever. Bullshit. We know that this is not the case. And if you think that the police are walking into a house and going, the woman did it, you're a fucking idiot. You are a fucking idiot. We know how much more likely it is a man to get dragged out of the house, even if he's a victim. We know this. This is on record. You can't fucking lie to us like this. Oh, they're being misidentified by the police. The trend is yet to be fully explored and in academic research, but a small study by the Women's Legal Service of Victoria, a very unbiased and very respected group, surely, earlier this year found police were consistently misidentifying female victims of family violence as primary aggressors. Oh, the horrors! The women say never did nothing. An analysis of client case files between January and May 2018 revealed that 55 female clients named by police as respondents to intervention orders, 32 had been incorrectly identified. Yeah, I'm not surprised that in our gynocentric court system, and in Victoria, by the way, go and look at my videos and find out how the courts deal with women in the courts. They can do no wrong. The fact that 23 women still were named as the primary respondent, that's fucking amazing. That is fucking amazing in Victoria. That stands out as fucking heroic almost, that the police stood by this shit and managed to get it through. Like I said, follow my earlier videos, you'll find one about Victoria, the sexist state. Okay. The trend is also being observed in Queensland and New South Wales. Right, because the women's never did nothing. The chief executive of Sisters Inside Derby Kilroy, because another unbiased advocacy group, advising the Australian Law Reform Commission. Hurrah, just what we need. More fucking feminists advising our legal system. Said that she's seen rising rates of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander women charged with breaches of domestic violence protection orders, often in circumstances where the police, rather than the intimate partner, have applied to impose the order. This is the killer. This one here. Did I tell you that I was going to explain the problem with Aboriginal women? They've done it for me. They have done it for me. Aboriginal men are not likely to report an abusive woman. Aboriginal elders, male elders, are complaining that they're being beaten up by people in their own communities. But the men are not likely to report the women. The police are seeing the danger, and the police are doing this job. Now, if you think that an Aboriginal liaison officer in an Aboriginal community is not going to favour a woman if she's being beaten up, you're fucking wrong. If you think the white police, when they step into those communities, are not going to fucking avoid being called sexist and racist, you are fucking wrong. And yet, here we see the police putting these domestic violence protection orders on women, and who the fuck is breaching these orders? The fucking women. So who's the problem? Is the man the problem? Do we think the man is the problem? That the women are, that the police are seeing this problem, and the men aren't even reporting it, and that the women are breaching the orders? Is this a man issue? Is it? Fact is, Aboriginal women, and you can bring up drugs and alcohol and poverty and remote communities all you fucking like. We don't excuse men for these things. We actually excuse Aboriginal people for a hell of a lot of crime we probably shouldn't. But they already are well and truly overrepresented in our prison system. So, we're very lenient. You know how we were abusers earlier on in this article. Yeah, it's all our fault, the colonisation and the crushing of the Aboriginal people. Yet we let them go on uncharged where we can. And still, these women cannot avoid breaching one of these bloody orders against them. No wonder they're in prison. The criminalisation of Indigenous women for domestic abuse, stop being fucking abusers, Miss Kilroy said, is unacceptable and totally inconsistent with the evidence that women and children are disproportionately survivors of violence. The reason this exists, this bias, is because sisters inside Derby Kilroy are advising the Australian Law Reform Commission. And what was the other one up here? The women's mental health legal system. That's why we have a bias. Not because women aren't fucking bad, because women are about as bad as men are. But we excuse them more often. There are more services trying to excuse them and invent excuses for them. Every fucking source through this document is a biased feminist organisation looking to excuse women and blame men. And here we have it. Is it men breaching orders? Is it men even reporting the women? The police are seeing who's the danger. And the police are not racing in to arrest women. That's just fucking ridiculous. According to this idiot Eleanor Campbell, misapplied intervention orders often prevent women from staying in their home and seeing their children, and may quickly lead to them breaching their order, even accidentally, and being charged by police. Yeah, my fucking ass. And plus, when did this never happen to men? When were men never removed from their children? When did men never get desperate to see their children? Every day I see a man say, I haven't seen my child for anything from 2 to 10 years. Because they've been removed from them, more often than not, just by the mother, who doesn't allow the visitations that the court said she had to give. Don't fucking get me on this one. If she committed a crime, then she was separated from the kids for a reason. She was probably drunk, abusive, neglectful of them. So she got removed from them. And trust me, I have lived around Aboriginal people long enough and for enough of my life that I know this is the case. When I put forward this idea, I've got advertising on the TV. A little circle of Aboriginal women playing cards out in the fucking dirt. And the kids are off messing around. And the story of the ad is, oh, you should go home and look after your kids because these fucking women need to be told not to neglect their kids. But she gets up and she thinks, oh, maybe just one more hand of cards. Oh no, I better not. I'm a better mother than that. Fuck off. Just fuck off. We wouldn't need the ads if that was true. A dangerous cycle. Yeah, well, how's it not a dangerous cycle for men? I just don't give a flying fuck if you're not going to address this in any sensible manner. Many mistrust police and are reluctant to report abuse. Yeah, right. And it starts with Aboriginal women who have Aboriginal liaison officers in their communities very often. Not even real police. Right? And then the police go in. They don't want to be seen as racist, so they basically tiptoe around them till something really serious happens. Then they arrest them, put them in prison. sometimes on remand because they're absolute crap. And again, we're not appropriately dealing with Aboriginal women. Did you not fucking read this paragraph back here? Where was a fucking paragraph that said rising rates of Aboriginal women being charged with breaches of domestic orders, not by their partners but by the fucking police, and then they can't stay away, so they're getting arrested. Oh, but it's an accident. Fuck off. Just fuck off. Arrgh. How can you not get angry at these articles? Seriously, this is my public broadcaster. My tax dollars go towards this shit. Many mistrust police, yeah, fuck off. Not interested. A female personage in any sort of dangerous situation is going to get a female officer put on their case. This is no great, issue. I don't see why. And it's more likely that a man's going to be arrested or removed from a premises, so she could pretty much just stand at the door and say, I fucking hit him, but take him away, will you? And that's what will happen. Now it's about conservative governments, because we've got a conservative government now. And, it's all about the conservative governments. It couldn't be the leniency that Labor governments... for anyone from outside Australia, the Liberal Party here is essentially our Conservative government, and the Labor Party is our progressives. Not as progressive as our Greens, but still on the way. But yes, this is about Conservative governments, because the Conservative governments have been tough on crime. Don't commit the fucking crimes. And why is it the Conservative governments, maybe the Labor governments, crawl up the arse of the Aboriginal people for the votes every fucking election round? And they do, big time. And so they're really light on them, and they're letting them get away with beating the fuck out of each other in their communities. So we can all moan about how sad it is these communities are in this state. Then we get a Conservative government come in, and they're tough on crime. Maybe what these communities need is someone who's fucking tough on crime. Ever think about that? Has to be about bloody Conservatives. Can't have them running any. Fuck away. Look, I've never voted for our Conservative government, for our Conservative Party. Never. I was a Labor voter years and years ago. I have voted Green when they were getting their act together. I will never vote Labor or Green ever again. I am actually probably likely to vote Conservative just to keep those two parties out of power. That's how twisted our system is. I am not in any way happy with the state of our Conservative government. The fact that we've got a fucking Pentecostal Christian who can't keep his religion out of the seat for a fucking more than a week. I'm not happy with that shit at all. But compare it to the other parties, and that's where I'm fucking probably voting. Pentecostals are less harm. At least we know how to keep them in check. Okay. Yeah. I'm going to duck out of this one. I'm going to call it quits. So I will link it as usual. Because when I get to stuff like thinking outside the bars, I think, yeah, but you never do it the same way for men, do you? This doesn't say anywhere in here we should do away with men's prisons. No. Because the crimes of men are much worse than the crimes of women. This article even mentions women who kill their partners. But the crimes of men are much worse than the crimes of women. Even the murderers. Fuck no. How is this not double standards? Anyway, why are our prisons full of domestic violence victims? It's not. It's full of perpetrators, and those perpetrators exist because our world has decided that it will write articles like this, always excusing every act a woman performs. Constantly. Always. Excuse, fucking excuse. And even the article makes the case for why these women are ending up in prison. It's because they're horrendous pieces of shit. Yet, it's someone else's fault. I'm out of here. That's it. I've had enough of this. It's already well long enough. I have been the anti-theocrat. May your gods remain fictional, and I will see you in the next one.